Good afternoon. Welcome to our panel discussion about Turkey's counter-terrorism policy and Syria. SETA Foundation is organizing this event to shed some light on the latest terror attack in Istanbul and the subsequent Operation Claw Sword. To discuss this, we have three distinguished speakers: Dr. Murat Aslan from SETA Foundation, Sibel, Koru, again from SETA Foundation, and Navvar Şaban from OMRAN Center for Strategic Studies. For the viewers, as a reminder, Turkey experienced a very disturbing terrorist attack in Istanbul, Istiklal Street, based on the evaluations and assessments by the Turkish security institutions. This attack was perpetrated by YPG elements of PKK who are based in Syria, and the order of their attack was given by YPG elements in Syria. And as a response and as a retaliation to this terror attack, Turkey just under a wide-scale aerial campaign against YPG, PKK targets and positions, both in northern Iraq and northern Syria, with its aerial assets such as F-16s and unmanned combat aerial vehicles. So we will discuss with our distinguished experts the implications and the future direction of the counterterrorism policy, and how these will impact the Syrian issue in a larger sense. Especially how the stakeholders, both regional and international actors, will respond to this new dynamics. So I will start with Dr. Murat Aslan as the first speaker. Each speaker will have 10 to 15 minutes. Dr. Murat Aslan is a foreign policy and security researcher at SETA Foundation. He's a military, especially he's a security expert. Especially with a long time experience in military and intelligence affairs. So, Dr. Aslan, my question to you is, based on the latest attack, PKK attack in Istanbul, and the subsequent Operation Claw Sword, how would you assess the nature and level of threats that is being posed by PKK YPG toward Turkey, and at the same time, what are the military dynamics of the Operation Claw Sword? What is your military assessment of the Operation Claw Sword? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. First, I would like to thank you organizing this event. It's a very timely one. And in the meantime, I know that now there are a lot of question marks in the minds of the global public and also Turkish public. So I will be very brief in my perception and also explanations. But if you try to understand the level of threat, you have to understand exactly the historical process, mainly having Turkey to the epicenter, fighting against terrorism, significantly against PKK, because there are a lot of terrorist organizations in Turkey, and PKK is just one, even though it does have different offshoots in Iraq, in Iran, in Syria, and also in Turkey with different brand names. Well, if you go through the 60s, 70s, 80s, well, it's clear that Turkish people were introduced to PKK terrorism right after 1970s. But mainly it was 1980s that PKK was active in terms of an armed struggle against Turkish armed forces. And 1990s, just to remind the audience, it was a term that picked the terror acts of PKK right after they had started direct attacks to villages, not the military or the gendarmerie forces, but the villages. What they did was to create a sort of fear environment, and they massacred all families that are not complying to the demands of PKK. So sometimes people are talking about PKK as if they are Kurdish movement, but no, they first started their acts by killing massacring the Kurds in the villages removed to the city centers. This is one fact we have to keep in mind. Another one is that the approach of the other countries or third parties complying to the literature on terrorism. They perceive PKK as an apparatus, as something that Turkey can not deal with and keep Turkey under control. If you go through 1990s, for instance, the developments in Balkans and Caucasus pushed the third parties to play with Turkey by exploiting PKK. We have to remember all these facts. And if you go to 1990s and 2000s, it's a fact that PKK benefited from the regional problems when there happened a sovereign gap of the states. For instance, Iraq and later than Syria, they enjoyed what? Territorialization. They established bases and then sent and infiltrated some terrorist cells into Turkey to start attacks, and Turkey repelled them successfully. On the other hand, Syria case, mainly Arab Spring, is a turning point. We know that the United States started providing support to Free Syrian Army, and later then they changed their path and they started supporting the PKK with a different name. The PYD is the legal extension, an extension of PKK as a sister organization, and they perceived it as what? A secular Marxist organization that could have balanced ISIS. And this picture actually brought us new sorts of terrorism globally. One of them is the lone wolves, stabbing individuals across the streets. It's just a reflection of what PKK did in Syria, because these lone wolves were together with PKK once. And second thing, there was a tendency of radicalism and also extremism, but in the West, I mean, and they united themselves together with PKK. And now we may witness an emerging trend in Europe or the United States directly challenging the governments, I believe. And we will see maybe in the coming decade. So just a brief summary of what PKK is. The threat posed by PKK is first right after suppression in Turkey. And I believe that it was 2015. It was a turning point. They had started some attacks, some sort of so-called resistance in city centers of Turkey, and they were pushed back. They were defeated. And what they had imagined during these days was to have the support of the local public, and they couldn't achieve it. The local public in Turkey was reactive to PKK, and they had to retreat them. But right after this event, we witnessed July 15 coup attempt. There was an interesting silence of PKK, maybe not to interfere what FETÖ did. And then Turkey started a sort of aggressive, proactive, preemptive counter-terrorism methodology. In this sense, we witnessed a priority in Turkish strategy, which is securing the borders by establishing zones that PKK cannot infiltrate. But, well, it has not finished yet. Still, we have some gaps across the border. The second thing, ISIS, well, it was a reason or justification for the United States to provide support to PKK. But at this point, we see a sort of cooperation of ISIS and PKK. First, to have a leverage against the United States, because once PKK feels that the US is, away from them, like what Trump did 2 years ago, then they use ISIS as a sort of blackmail. The second thing, once Turkey suppressed them in the area they positioned themselves, they started attacks in significant cities of Turkey. Well, the latest incident, Istanbul, just period to that, it was Mersin city, and they directly targeted civilians, and it was a new turning point again, because we revisited PKK strategy. Why? The US and European statesmen, stateswomen were perceiving PKK as something to balance ISIS. And in the meantime, they territorialized and, just treated them as if a de facto state. But once they started direct attacks with indiscriminate targeting to civilians, well, now it's something to revisit. Why? Because now they just see the reality that PKK or PYD or else, whatever, they are terrorist organization. On the other hand, we see a geographical expansion of PKK directly surrounding Turkey. For instance, during the Armenian-Azerbaijan war, we see some PKK posts in favor of Armenians. We know it. On the other hand, in Iraq, they were against KDP, Barzani's forces, mainly Peshmerga, but aligning themselves with, Kurdistan Patriotic Union in Süleymaniye. So there was a differing balance just to repel what's perceived as threat by PKK. Then let me go and visit what happened in Istanbul and also in Syria afterwards, mainly taking operations Eagle Sword to the epicenter of our discussion. Well, in Istanbul, it was a crowded street that most Turkish people and the ones visiting Turkey knows, much better. And it was an indiscriminate targeting of civilians with an explosive. Well, there is no consensus on definition of terrorism, though. We know that this clear act is a violence directly targeting non-combatants. If you go through the laws, regulations of the United States or European countries, even though they don't have any consensus, it's one clear common thing that if any organization targets civilians, non-combatants, well, it's a terrorist organization. That's crystal clear. And that's why PKK tended to refuse this act, because they don't want to call themselves as terrorists, but something different. This is one fact. Well, what was the reaction of the Europeans and the Americans? Well, there were some condemnations to Istanbul attack. On the other hand, they preferred to be much more passive and silent. I think for Europeans, it's a bit sense because they know that there are a bit, sympathizers in European capitals, and they don't want to import a societal problem into their streets. That's one thing that Europeans are really careful. So that's why right after this attack, they were a bit at the lowest profile, and well, they called this event as something not desirable, though. They were not open. They were not pledging a terrorist title to this organization and also to this act. This is a reality. The United States, well, they were again silent, expressed some sorrows, though, not that much reactive to PKK. Why? There are many reasons. The first one is the political environment in the United States favors PKK, PYD, or SDF as if they are representing Kurds, and I don't agree with this. And second thing, they must have a pillar in Syria, maybe not to counter ISIS, because ISIS is not a problem anymore, but just to build up a sort of environment that they are in charge, and they have to have an apparatus. And that's why they are tolerating the acts of PKK and also PYD. In this picture, the reaction of Turkey was to start an operation at the north of Iraq, mainly not only in Iraq, but also in Iraq and also in Syria, with a coverage of 1,000 kilometers width of area, with like 200 or 300 kilometers depth, if you include Kandil and Assos region in Iraq. Well, it's a very large area, and it was a really integrated and coordinated air campaign to destroy the targets identified period of PKK, PYD. And this act was a clear sound to the United States, Russia, Iran, and Europeans. Why? Right after the signature of agreements with the United States and Russia, there was a pledge of these two countries to evacuate the regions at the north of Iraq from PKK. And the pledge was that it was a promise, written promise actually, the 30 kilometers of area with a depth starting from the Turkish border, there had to be no terrorist cell. Well, that means they promised, since they believe that they are capable of controlling this organization. Well, Istanbul attack is significant because the lady captured in this act with clear proofs. Well, she confessed that she was trained at the north of Syria, mainly in Münbich, then sent to Idlib area, and then infiltrated to Turkey. Well, somebody's accused Turkey plotting this act because this lady was not a Syrian, but a Somalian. But I think we have to be aware of the strategy of PKK then, and also PYD, because it's an equity. PYD equals to PKK. What was that? Once this lady could succeed this act, and she succeeded, well, then PKK would argue that it was pure a Syrian act because she was perceived as Syrian. But the confessions of the other captured individuals, arrested individuals, were that she was to be executed in Greece right after this attack, just to erase the, affiliation of PKK. Well, at this point, I think the operation, the air campaign, was a revenge, was a retaliation to PKK by neutralizing it and starting a new wave of Turkish activism at the north of Syria and also in Iraq. And we will see exactly what happened in the coming month. So I think my time is up. So let me just pass the word to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Aslan. It was quite helpful to hear a deeper analysis of PKK's threat that is being posed to Turkey's national security, in addition to the immediate dynamics of the counter-terrorism operation, and at the same time the latest attack. So at this point, I will switch to our second speaker, Sibel Koru. Sibel Koru is a foreign policy and security researcher at SETA Foundation. Her research interests are primarily in defense industry's input to national security, and also counter-terrorism. But first and foremost, the drones and the transformative role of drones in counter-terrorism. So in this section, I will kindly ask Sibel Koru the contribution of Turkish indigenously developed unarmed combat aerial vehicles, or otherwise drones, because in Operation Claw Sword, we learned that there have been many armed drones that were used against PKK targets, in addition to F-16 fighter jets. So, Sibel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bilgehan. And I'll try to explain briefly how Turkey's drones turn out to be a military instrument for Turkey's counterterrorism strategy. And during Operation Claw Sword, some sites and positions of the PKK were targeted by both combat jets and the UAVs. Especially Turkish UAVs targeted a base belonging to the so-called special forces of the PKK in Malikiye, some oil refineries in Kehtaniya, some static and mobile targets in Tel Tamir, and ammo depots in Tarifat, and an agricultural airport in Hasaka. In some video footages, Aksungur for the first time was also seen while operating over northern Syria. Actually, these pictures shows us how Turkey utilizes its air and space power in such a complex CTA operation environment. Apart from the material damage, Turkey expects some sort of psychological effects of these strikes on terrorist organization. Accordingly, it will affect morale and motivation of the terrorists and decrease in some support of civilian population to PKK, and eventually it will separate tourists from populations where they get support. A single platform may hinder the operational capacity of the terrorist organization by eliciting fear, fracturing communication, and decimating command and control. Actually, Turkey didn't invent this drone-centric approach in one day. Since 2015, Turkey has lost its faith in Western-mediated conflict resolution mechanisms, so enabled a unilateral hard power approach with a sophisticated power projection capability. However, when we came to 2020s, we see a blend of a drone-centric hard power with a more balanced and cooperative approach. Drones enable Turkey to assert its own interests with relatively limited diplomatic resources. While this will elevate Turkey's standing, as in the case of Ukrainian conflict, it will also incentivize Turkey's rivals. Turkey now exports this drone-centric, innovative military approach to other states as well. However, in 1990s, in Turkey, the UAV systems were used only for artillery reconnaissance missions. And Turkey initially introduced basic mini UAVs to have tactical units identify the terror targets. Upon proving that a tactical class UAV can be armed with national capabilities and successfully operated, UAVs became one of the most significant sources of kinetic strike power. Today, medium altitude and tactical class UAVs provided aerial detection, identification, and target elimination support for Air Force elements and artillery batteries of the land forces during counter-terrorism operations inside and outside of Turkey. With the integration of indigenous weapon systems into the tactical class UAV systems, the UAVs have become a critical force multiplier for the Turkish armed forces. And my observation is that the drones contributed to the efficiency of military operations conducted by Turkey. First of all, they reduced human costs by minimizing friendly casualties in the operation area. They provided close air support to friendly elements during operations. They reduced the pressure on the troops participating in the operation and allowed the troops to gain tactical advantage. And also they delivered strategic results by successfully neutralizing high-value targets. Moreover, they reduced the capability of terrorist elements to conduct attacks by suppressing their tactical capacity. And lastly, they neutralized terrorists in urban areas with pinpoint accuracy, minimizing the civilian casualties. For example, during the Operation Euphrates Shield, the UAVs were mainly used to gather tactical intelligence and provide limited fire support during the operation. They played a more active role in Operation Olive Branch. They contributed to the operation's decision-making processes by providing tactical intelligence and fire support to the troops and visibly transformed the course of action. The UAVs successfully detected and eliminated threats encountered by Turkish armed forces. Also, UAVs located numerous caves and tunnels used as shelters and contributed to eliminating threats with the intelligence they provided through reconnaissance and surveillance surveillance missions or by directly neutralizing hostile elements. On the other hand, in Operation Spring Shield, the UAVs were used for the first time in a low-intensity conflict environment against a regular army in a coordinated manner. Turkish drones entered the Syrian airspace and conducted coordinated airstrikes on regime targets and inflicted heavy casualties. During the operation, TB2s and Anka-S were subject to intense electronic warfare and GPS jammings. That's why Turkey emphasized to develop electronic countermeasures after that experience. Of course, there are some main drivers behind the success of Turkish drones. Firstly, surface-to-air missile systems have difficulty in detecting UAVs due to their low radar cross-section values and low speeds. So they have low visibility and detectability. And secondly, Turkish drones conducted joint operations, and they were supported by land and air-based signal intelligence and electronic intelligence and electronic warfare systems. Modern electro-optical sensors equipped with laser rangefinders and laser designators enable to detect and mark surface-to-air missile systems from outside their effective range. Also, smart micro-munitions with navigation systems provided the opportunity to attack the targets from greater distances and higher altitudes. The new warhead types, especially, they enabled higher lethality against targets such as armored vehicles, radar antennas, surface-to-air missile systems, or fortified positions and placements and soft targets. The other factor should be underlined that Turkey has more experienced pilots and sensor operators who gained a pretty much experience, mostly in combat conditions. Lastly, Turkey has gained ability to update the UAV platform software and hardware without foreign support, actually. Indigenously built products decrease the amount of dependency to the foreign support. For now, that's all I can highlight. I will be happy to answer your questions during Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Sibel, for a very informative analysis of the inputs of drones to Turkey's counterterrorism policy, especially in recent years, beyond the current contribution of the drones to the Operation Closed Sword. And now, after this analysis of drones' contribution to Turkey's counterterrorism policy, and especially the Operation Closed Sword, I will switch to our third and last speaker, Navvar Şaban. Navvar Şaban is a well-established Syrian expert. He has done extensive works on social, political, and military dynamics of Syrian crisis, the Syrian civil war. My question to Navvar will be, what is the impact of the current Operation Closed Sword on the trajectory and prospect of the Syrian crisis in general terms? But at the same time, what is the impact of this operation on YPG's military capacity on the ground? Thank you very much.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you, Sibel, and thank you, Murat. In regard of the ongoing military operation, for all the technical question you asked from the Syrian perspective in regard of how things are being developed, it's very important, first of all, to talk about the major trends that are being always represented at the time being in the media, especially from the PKK side or some of the platform that mainly are supporting for them. First of all, whenever you talk about an area which is an area of conflict, you talk about stabilization. And there is a huge talk about a huge effort done from the PKK side, YPG, SDF, whatever, in stabilizing and securing the area. But if you want to go, and we don't need to get a lot of information. There is several small but a huge incident that happened during the last couple of years. In July 2020, starting from 2018, it was the year where Afrin Liberation Front, which is an insurgent group, was majorly active in a major way in targeting civilian, targeting SNA, targeting Turkish military bases in Afrin. Why I'm connecting that only to connecting in a bigger page for destabilization is because basically they are not only an insurgent group, they are also an insurgent group who's operating with the Iranian-backed militia in Nubul al-Zahra. So now we have a scenario where we have a militia in Nubul al-Zahra, which is listed as a terrorist group operating with Afrin Liberation Front, which is an insurgent who is not in within the structure, let's say in an official way, not in within the structure of the SDF. So it's a huge example of how things are being operated here. Another example, in 2020, there was a couple of pictures showing commander from the local defense forces and Mudafi'in Halab Legion with some of the SDF commander. It was a session for training, for drone trainings. Another one in early 2000, I think 18, when first of all, that was major because it's still happening right now. After the administration of Trump decided to retreat from the several area in Manbij, Raqqa, that created a gap. This gap, the Russian does not have the power on the ground to fill this gap. So basically, it was an invitation for Iran. Iran this time did not use their only local Syrian allies, but they made sure to give a power for some of the foreigner militia that they have. Al-Fatimiyun in that time established around like 15 points or even more. Now it's a little bit less around a Tabaqa area. And they have training camps, so it's confusing for everyone. You talk about stabilization, you talk about that targeting specific target is destroying all the effort done from the SDF to stabilize and secure the area. But at the same time, you're operating with Iranian-backed militia on different level. You are operating with Iranian-backed militia in major levels, not only as using their land. For example, people said that it's a huge area, Nubul and Zahra and Deir Jamal and all these areas. It is possible for them, Afrin Liberation Front, to operate without even telling them. No, not only that, because the equipment that is used to hit civilian in Afrin is being mobilized by the area of control of the Iranian-backed militias. So we have a cooperation now between the SDF, Afrin Liberation Front, another backed militia. And I'm not talking also here about the smuggling point, which is operated also by joint operation by the SDF and joint patrol. These smuggling point are one of the major, unfortunately, gate for the IED and all the car that are planned to be exploded and within civilian. Few months ago, there was a trend, and it was obvious that we were able to find out that all the most of the cars that that exploded in the last year with targeting especially relief managers where it came from Manbij. So it is what's being trended about this operation being a major step back in regard of civilization does not make sense. It's facts. I'm not talking fantasy. I'm just listing facts. I'm not giving any kind of analysis. It's fact. It's just like 1 + 1 = 2. That's it. I'm telling you, SDF is operating with Iranian-backed militia to hit civilian. So that's it. It's a problem. So another thing about the operation, there is something very important right now. We witnessed recently a shift in some of the accounts, official account for the SDF. They had some kind of a connection with the, or trying to aim to establish a connection with the regime forces, which is for me not surprising, not very surprising, but significant, because all the locations that are being targeted right now, especially the one are in Hasaka, these locations are known to be filled with, I'm not going to say direct presence from the American side, but they have an influence over there, and there is nothing. So there is an obvious attempt from the SDF side to build this kind of connection, or at least try to do just like what happened in the recent mobilization, when there was a very close battle on Tel Rifat. Actually, that time, one of the major things that happened is that Iran sent more than one group from their foreign militia from Sayyida Zainab, southern Damascus, to Nubla and Zahra, and it was obvious. It was a direct message, and I don't think that. I think also it was passed in the meeting in Tehran. This area, Nubla and Zahra, Castello Road, should be out of any kind of operation. That's why we saw SDF opening the gate of Minnig Air Base for the Iranian-backed militia, local defense forces. Local defense forces is an Iranian-backed militia, despite being part of the Syrian regime army. So now we were able to establish this point. The SDF is operating in different level, not, I'm gonna say maybe security level, military level, indirect level with the Iranian-backed militia. The SDF have two insurgent groups affiliated with them, Afrin Liberation Front and I think Fury of Olive or something like that. And these two areas, they have their media channels, and they admitted that they are targeting over and over again the opposition area, especially Euphrates and Afrin. And something important about ISIS, they say that there are ongoing battle with ISIS, but we see that most of the ISIS attack and operation are happening in Deir ez-Zor. I'm not saying that there is no ISIS cell. Everyone knows that there is ISIS cell, because the announcement of defeating ISIS was that was some kind of fantasy, because you cannot defeat something now if it shifted to itself to hidden cells. Now it's a different thing. You have to admit it, but they admit it in a very late time. And now, if we want to go again by facts and by number, we will see that the presence of ISIS is more in Deir ez-Zor. And if I recall, there is no drone attack from the Turkish side or clashes from the Syrian National Army in Deir ez-Zor. So how come this area is not stabilized? Is it not in your major interest as SDF? Is it related to ethnicity, Arab, Encore? I don't want to go there, but this is also a very major question. Why you are talking about stabilizing a specific area in Hasaka next to the M4 International Road, and you're basically handing over the other areas that you control to either ISIS or Iranian-backed militia, Al-Baqir, to control it, to buy real estate. Most of the real estate, most of the land are being sold to in Deir ez-Zor, SDF-held area, are being sold to Iranian allies through SDF broker. So that's a major thing to talk about. So I don't see, to conclude, I don't see that the ongoing operation is triggering any kind of step back. Until now, it's obvious that these targets are carefully studied, and but of course there will be a reaction from the SDF. It was obvious that their initial attempt was a military reaction targeting areas inside Afrin and inside the Turkish territory, but it did not continue because their capability, now I'm answering your question about capability, because their capability is much lower than that. When they were able, let's say, to defeat ISIS, they had the direct support of the US forces and the international coalition. So now I don't think that they will be able to launch a military base. You will never see SDF launching a military base against the Turkish side. Their reaction or their counter attack, it's gonna be divided into artillery and maybe they will try to find any kind of security gaps to smuggle their IED and to kill more civilians. Targeting infrastructure. They are brilliant in that, because when targeting infrastructure, that will create a wave of let's say negative vibes within the civilian in that area, and then will put pressure on the Turkish side. This is, by the way, what Iran did a couple of years ago in Idlib. Similar act. And the last point is that they are using it, which is the media. If you go to the media, you can see that you want to see something significant, just put the spokesman and Ilham and see how both of them are trying to get to the same goal, but both of them are using different tools. So, okay, if we didn't pass in this one, we will go with that one. If we didn't pass in the story of the kids, we will go to the story of the old people. Civilian life is precious everywhere. And it's very bad when you find someone who is actually willing to go to different level to even start profiting from either fake news, or because basically you use the civilian location to establish your artillery base. That's something we did not talk about yet. When Afrin Liberation Front used their anti-missile, anti-ground missile to hit a Turkish tank or a Syrian National Army tank in Afrin, they put it on a roof of a civilian home in force. By doing that, and then keeping an evidence of using that roof, there is a high percentage that it will be targeted, because basically collecting data, it's data. Always when you deal with data, there is always a percentage of loss, but there is always a reason, there is always a trigger for these kind of like events that's happening. And whenever you go, whatever angle you take it, it's always the insurgent. It's always the cross-border entity that is basically trying to achieve something beyond their initial goal. So in conclude, I think the operation will continue, but I don't think that it's to expand to a military ground operation. But also, not every military ground operation is an operation that lead to an expansion in area. Maybe we will shift. Maybe we will see a shift in using our ground forces, but in order to hit and withdraw, targeting and eliminating threat. Because it's obvious, the bold title of this operation is eliminating threats and eliminating this kind of infrastructure that is in a long-term harming, especially the camps that is being used either by Khabur al-Alami or foreigner militia to train the so-called special forces. Also, the local refinery, which is being, this oil at the local refinery is being sold to the regime through Al-Qatarji, which is, again, someone listed as in sanctions. So it's complicated. Even when it comes to the oil, it's complicated. And the SDF is using entities from the regime side and Iran that are listed as in sanction. So if we are going to talk about destabilization and these kind of stuff, we have to put all the facts that we know, and we will end up with the obvious result. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Navvar. Especially the widely underreported and overlooked aspect of YPG, which is being a very deeply destabilizing actor within the areas they control, and at the same time, another underreported aspect, which is their connections, their cooperations with Iran and Iranian-backed militias in Syria. And with this, we came to the end of our first round, and now we're switching to Q&A session. And there are a couple of questions from our viewers, and I will direct them to our speakers. So there is a question now. Maybe Navvar, you can pick this one. There is the talk about an upcoming ground operation in addition to the Operation Closed Sword, and even President Erdogan alluded to that eventuality. What is your expectation about the potential locations of the ground operation, or if you even agree that there will be a ground operation? So, what is your take on that?
So, when we want to talk about a possible ground operation, it will target basically whatever is triggering a threat, either for the Euphrates Shield area, Afrin, or the Turkish territory. So we always have a priority, not priority, we had a list since 2021, when there was always an extent in the threats that is being triggered and established by the SDF in this area. We had Tel Rifat, we had Minbij, we had Kobani and Arab, all these areas. But each area had its own characteristic and current situation right now. Actually, we were talking just like with a couple of my fellow colleagues in regard of the timing for each. If there was an actual military operation in this area, what is the time frame for each one? We all agreed that Ain al-Arab Kobani will be the one that take too much time in case. But you're talking about a country against a militia. So eventually the result it's obvious, but being Kobani and Arab, for sure there will be gathering for I don't know, I'm not gonna say fragile emotion. I don't want to steal any, maybe they had a certain victory in Ain Arab against some ISIS cells. So I'm sure that they will use that. I'm sure that they will use the torture of civilian that happened in that area, so on, so on, so on. But in general, I don't see that there will be, if there was a military operation, I see it more clearly to be in Tel Rifat than Minbij at the time being. Yani, it will be in a two-phase, starting from the Eastern Euphrates and then from the, Western Euphrates, then Eastern Euphrates. But at the time being, I see that there is a lot of things like aligned international wise, not like before, not like a few months ago, but at the same time, does Turkey really need to expand more, or is it more enough to eliminate the threat and just eliminate the threat and retreat? Because when you expand more, is it really useful to deal with a security threat in a military way? Sometimes it does happen, sometimes it is useful, but when this military security entity, insurgent or whatever, is playing the media game, is playing their last card, I don't feel it's always useful in different level to expand right now. But I see that if the air operation did not hit their targets or their end target, there will be definitely a use of ground forces. But I still think that it will be, again, used in a way to continue the ongoing goals for the current campaign. Just one last point. The military campaign was already started long time ago. When you have an ongoing clashes, ongoing artillery, but the thing is that time when they use for this weapon, there was no aim goal for this. It was basically to secure whatever being written on the maps as lines. But now there is an end goal, which is destroying the threats. And one of the goals that already was achieved is using the airspace. Now this is again, because whenever you break the airspace for something, you're always going to use it. So we will always going to see whenever there is a threat, there will be an F-16 destroying the threat.
Okay. Thank you, Navvar. Thank you for bringing up the question whether the expansion of territorial control is the best way to ensure the security. Is quite useful. From now on, I kind of ask all speakers to limit their answers to a couple of minutes. So building on the question that was directed to Navvar, there was a question to Dr. Aslan. If Turkey undertakes a ground operation after this aerial campaign, what will be the reactions to that from regional actors, but at the same time from Western countries?
Thank you for the question. Actually, what happened during the previous or afterwards, the previous military campaigns at the north of Syria clearly indicates what will happen. There's a great sense of Turkey that once you start a military campaign, the ultimate goal is neutralizing the terrorist organization. Well, Navvar said it requires a territorial control. I agree, but I think it does have a double edge, which the first is for sure territorial control. Though in countering terrorism, it's neutralizing, totally destroying the terrorist structure over there, because there must be no remnant ready to deploy to the already established control in the regions at north, but neutralizing is much more important. And at this point, I believe, if you categorize the states, the West, the East, or Russia, Iran, Europe, the United States, well, there will be some differing and inconsistent voices as a reflection pending to the force applied on PKK. Territorial control was usually a point of criticism in European mind with an inconsistency, because Turkey perceived the Syrian population in Turkey to be integrated to Turkish society rather than having them back in their own countries. So the reaction of Europeans with a favor of PKK because of an increased level of propaganda in during the last decade, well, I believe that they will react in a negative manner to Turkey. It's not a secret. The second thing, as I said before, the reaction of Europe is usually about having the social outcomes of this event, this campaign, be isolated either in Turkey or in Syria. On the other hand, there's another thing. The US, well, they are providing support to PKK, PYD in Syria, and for sure they had declared that they will counter all attempts directly threatening the east of Euphrates River, and they had, started a campaign against regime forces once they started to pass the Euphrates River previously, together with Iranians. Well, the US is just at the verge. Why? There's an increasing importance of the Turkish geopolitical prominence in the region, mainly because of this Ukraine and Russia war. In the meantime, we do not know what will happen in Iran, and think that US will try to balance this prominence with their agenda in Syria and Iraq. So it's a confusing situation for the US. But Iran and regime, well, they will try to employ two different approaches. Once Turkey starts a military campaign, I believe that they will try to coerce PKK, be compliant to their demands in future. I don't expect a favoritism from the Iranian and regime side on Turkey. That's why Turkey must be really careful. Russia, on the other hand, will present a low profile, I believe, because they need Turkey not only for a legitimacy in their, story in Ukraine, but they have to have an exit gate through Turkish political position. So as you can see, there are differing and different agendas of the third parties, but there is one fact really important. The already de facto divided Syria leans on the external threats, either at the north in Idlib or regime held area, or east of Euphrates River. So I believe that once Turkey starts a military campaign, there will be another wave of diplomacy to persuade Turkey not to, challenge the status quo, I believe. But if terrorism over there, I believe that Turkey will start it. That's a fact. Thank you. And sorry for extending it.
No, it's okay. Thank you very much. It was also important to introduce the dynamics of the developments in Iran, and at the same time, in reaction of many stakeholders, bearing in mind what's going on in Ukraine crisis too. So, thank you. And there is also another question to Sibel. There is always when Türkiye conducts a military operation, cross-border operation in northern Syria. We saw this in Spring Shield. There are always new systems that are being deployed. So in these operations, we see for the first time the use and employment of new systems. So in this operation called Sword, also we learned that Aksungur UAV was deployed for the first time, and even some argue that even Akıncı armed drone was also for the first time officially used in this operation. So if Turkey undertakes a ground operation against YPG positions in Syria, what is your expectation about the potential systems indigenously developed by Turkish defense industry to be used for the first time to surprise us in a ground operation?
Thank you, Bilgehan, for the question. And as long as the threats are evolving, so Turkish defense industry has to keep up with them. And in previous, as you mentioned, in previous Operation Claw Log, Akıncı was the first time operational. And now we see in this Operation Claw Sword, the Akıncı has neutralized all the targets successfully in Syria, over Syria. So we're seeing a rapid industrial capacity is building. Now Turkey investing on some sort of loitering munitions as kamikaze drones, Deli, Kargı, Alpagut, and so far. We may see in them in next operation. We see in this operation Teber guidance kit used and enabled a deeper penetration capacity for air forces. Turkey has conducted an operation in 70 kilometers deep in Syria for the first time. So we can say that unmanned systems has been a push factor, a pioneering one for industrial developments. Now we see Turkey develops unmanned ground systems and vessels. So we may see them, of course, in the near future to be used in this kind of operations.
Thank you, Sibel. And the last question. With this question, hopefully we will finish the panel discussion. And the last question is for you, Navvar. For the first time, for a very long time, Turkey's cross-border operations against YPG were limited to areas, and especially after the 2020 memorandum between Turkish and US governments, Turkey stayed away from engaging YPG forces within the areas where United States is influential. US forces are influential. So in this operation, we saw that Turkish forces targeted Malikiye and also other US areas where they are influential, and at the same time, oil installations and oil refineries for the first time were hit. So what is your take on these novelties? Is a new kind of game on?
First of all, it's very important point to mention that even before the current development, I think Sibel will agree on that, there was an increase on the drone surgical hits in the eastern part of Al-Hasaka, especially after Tal Tamr. There was actually a drone goings beyond I'm not going to say beyond the 30 km, but beyond the regular target that was being targeted during the previous operation. And that was happening near the military operation, the military presence of the American, but the specific target. So that at that level, we had, it was obvious, well knowledge for everyone that there is some kind of common ground in regard of specific name that is being eliminated by surgical operation by the Turkish drone. And but this is the first time that we actually see these drones, F-16, going way deep to Al-Malkiya side and hitting the oil refinery. Someone mistaken was telling me that how the Americans are allowing their project to be hit by saying that the oil refinery are their American project. No, it's not. The American did not put even $1 single for the oil refinery. It is the regime, actually, and the Iranian al-Qatarji-backed militia. So basically what's happening right now is, I think there is an instruction, a rule of instruction, rule of engagement. But what's happening right now is a new set of rule of engagement is going on, and it's being written. I think this is also a strategic goal to be gained, because now the F-16 is here, the drone are going beyond the 50, 30 km. So everything is being rewritten now in a way that serves in any kind of further or future political negotiation. So maybe there will be no need for advancing in a ground, on more unstable ground, full of, let's say, booby traps, and maybe the goal could be achieved only by using the current new shape of forces and tools that are being used in different areas, not only in Tel Rifat and Minir. No, we are talking about area near even Ash-Shaddada in Al-Hasaka. Thank you. Thank you very much, Navvar. And with this question and answer, and I will finish this session, this panel discussion. I'm really grateful to all panelists who provided great analysis for this session. Murat, Aslan, Sibel, Koru, Navvar, Şaban, thank you all very much for your contribution to this panel discussion. And I would like to thank to all our viewers wherever you happen to be, and hope to see you in our next panel discussions and our other events. So till next time, goodbye. Thank you very much.